morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. On the show today, Pete's got all the very latest from the Shakedown test in Sepang. We're taking a look at MotoGP's sole rookie on the grid for this season too. Former Suzuki boss Livio Suppo has been making some predictions ahead of the new season. We'll be taking a little look at those. And we've got some more of your questions to answer. Remember, if you want to send us a question now, you can voice note it to us. Do it on your phone and email it to podcast@crash.net along with your name and where you're from. Keep it to 30 seconds-ish and we'll get you on the show and the guys will answer your questions live on air. If you don't want to voice note it, you can still send it the old-fashioned way. Write it down. Either send it to us on social media or you can send it to that same email address and we will still get it. Right, the recording date is Tuesday the 7th of February. My name is Harry Benjamin. Joining me, as always, is Crash MotoGP editor Peter McLaren and former Grand Prix rider and British champion Keith Hewin. Pete, let's dig in straight away, shall we? Sepang Shakedown test only really just finished in the last hour or so. What's been happening over the last couple of days that you can tell us? Anything juicy?
So yeah, just to explain this, not the main test, obviously that's coming up in 2 days. This is the test just for the test riders and the rookies, in this case, just Augusto Fernandez, you mentioned just before. So yeah, they've got, those guys have been out on track. They've got 3 days. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't very good on days 1 and 2. It was a bit like English weather, as some of my Italian colleagues were keen to point out. It was drizzling, basically. Not very usual for Sepang. You know, usually it's boiling hot and then it tips down in a thunderstorm. This was kind of drizzle, overcast skies, and especially for day 2, almost all of it was affected by rain, really. The other thing to say is that Danny Pedrosa was there, but he wasn't using a transponder, or his transponder wasn't turned on. Now, we got a bit of a glimpse of his lap times late on day 2 when suddenly he popped up on the screens, but that must have been a mistake and they suddenly realised and switched it off again. But
so they are allowed to do that? They could just switch it off and on?
Yeah, it's up to them. Yeah, I think it's exactly why they didn't have the transponder wasn't really clear or not turned on, but it sounds like it was Danny's, his idea. So, who knows? But yes,
you imagine being someone of his standing and suddenly he's 5 seconds off the pace. I mean, it's a shakedown test at the end of the day, and you don't quite know what he's got to fit in there. But there's a little bit of ego that comes that way as well. You don't want to be seen to be the last man on the board, that's for sure. So maybe I'm just sort of speaking it as a rider's perspective. You wouldn't really want to be embarrassed by it, especially when you've got someone like Cal Crutchlow who's massively retired and he's quick.
Yeah. The other thing is that, of course, that maybe they're testing things and they don't want to exactly show the others how fast they were with those things. So a combination of those two things, maybe. I mean, we were expecting a lot of aerodynamics parts this week. Because of the rain, I don't think we've seen them all. I think there's more stuff still to come, but we did see some new parts coming out from all the factories. Probably really only sort of Honda didn't really change too much. The KTMs, we saw new fairings, but we'd seen them at Valencia. Now they've also got, we believe, these new parts developed with Red Bull, advanced technologies, so that input, they've been testing the wind tunnel, those are also available at this test. So another thing, more things to watch out for in the official test. I think some things have been pushed over. Anyway, lap times wise, Cal was fastest day 1, day 2, and then day 3, which has just finished, as you say, Harry, that Pirro went to the top in the last hour. So that was the day with the best action. He was the only rider under 2 minutes. Which is a pretty fast lap time. The race record is 1:59.6 by Jorge Martin last October. So obviously, a short run versus a race run, but still it shows the test riders are in the ballpark on the lap times and the track is in good condition. So when weather permitting, when the real testing, should we say, gets underway, we could be seeing some very fast lap times. All eyes, of course, on the Yamaha engine, the top speeds. There is a top speed listed with the times. How accurate it is, who knows? Cal was keen to point out that it's in the braking zone, but Cal was quick today. His bike did a 3:35 according to the timing screens. Now, that would be 4 or 5 kilometers an hour quicker than Quartararo did during the Grand Prix weekend, and he was the quickest of the Yamahas. So good signs from Yamaha, but we don't know for sure until we get all the bikes out there on track. But yeah, that was really it. That was it, just sort of setting the stage for the 3-day test to come from the 10th to the 12th.
Very nice. Well, it certainly looked like Yamaha might have something up their sleeve. We've got a few questions in on Yamaha about having the engine speed. We'll come on to it a little bit. But, I mean, Keith, did you pick up anything from over the last couple of days? Or not? Is it how much can you really get from a shakedown?
Off the back of tons off the back of that, plus what Pete said. I mean, there were a lot of things to pick up on there. I mean, the last point that you made, Cal spoke to Pete and said that basically they put the transponder for the top speed too close to the braking area, so you get a bit of inconsistency. If you're a yard on the brakes earlier, then you lose a couple of mile an hour off the top end or gain it, and so it's an inconsistent thing. I always find that really annoying that they use the same place as a car. Obviously, a car can go so much deeper at the end of the straight than a bike can, even though the bike brakes are really, really good, but they haven't got the contact patch to be able to do that kind of thing. So you get that inconsistency all of the time on top speed. The other thing is this secrecy around the test. I mean, it always seems so bloody unnecessary to me. I mean, I understand that they might be testing stuff they don't want people to get too much of a close-up on. They don't want to give too much away to each other. But we're at the point where they can't change anything anyway. Whatever their strategy is for this year, they're not going to be able to change it. You can't change it in a week. You can't change it in a month. It's a situation where they're committed to whatever they're testing, and they're committed to starting the season with whatever they've already decided they're going to test with. There's only going to be small changes to what they've already got at the end of the day. So it's quite a frustrating time for everybody looking in, and the restrictions on the media to not be able to see stuff seems unreasonable. You've got the situation where the shakedown test massively affected. That is the worst case scenario when you get bad weather. First 2 days, bad weather. You can't go through your schedule, your program of testing. It's really, really laid out like a military operation. You know, Cal being fast, I just love Cal Crutchlow. A, he always gives you a quote. B, he always does the business. When he gets on a motorbike, he rides it to the limit. And I don't know where he finds that. He just loves riding a motorbike, and he's still bloody fast. Pirro popping one in. You know, they might have thrown the kitchen sink at it for the final, you know, to be top of the timetable at the end. It's always a badge of honour, isn't it, to end the test as top bike, whatever that might be. So Pirro popping one in there doesn't surprise me. But Cal Crutchlow, what a worker this few days. He has put some bloody mileage in down in Sepang, and that is not an easy racetrack, not an easy set of weather conditions. You'll be sweating your whatsits off for the entire 3 days. And when it's raining as well, you're sitting around in a garage. He has a boredom threshold of about, 0.001%. He just cannot stand being bored, Crutchlow. And sitting in the back of the garage when it's raining and you can't get out there, and there's nothing to do. How many times you want to talk to your colleagues and friends up and down pit lane? You get bored with that even after half a day. So it ain't easy being a test rider. I'm surprised he still wants to do it, but good on him.
Well, I suspect the dollar's not too shabby for him.
Yeah, but you don't need it.
No, that's true.
And Yamaha had 3 test bikes there, and as Keith was saying, just to underline the workload that Cal was putting in, there was 3 test bikes. The T1, T2, T3 is what they were numbered as, if you like. And Cal rode all of them, but for the first 2 days, he was the only Yamaha test rider on track. Then today, the Japanese test riders sort of joined in, and so Nakasuga and Nozane, they joined in on some of the other bikes. But Cal still ended up riding, I think, until sort of mid-afternoon. And I think he said he stopped, he ate a banana. That was it. Other than that, he was going flat out because, as Keith says, the weather meant that they were in delay. They couldn't do everything they wanted on day 2. So you've got a big queue of things to do on day 3. And it's just constantly riding. So he's got a couple of days off, and then he said he will be riding at the official test. I think not the first day. So they've given him that, but he will be back for days 2 and 3 alongside all the race riders. So and one other thing that was coming up as well as the weather, the tyre allowance for testing. That seems to be quite. I think it's dropped a little bit this year, and teams are having to be a little bit strategic with when they use their testing tyres, and they have to just sort of, and that includes wets and slicks. When you use those tyres, when you don't, what are the track conditions like, to really make the most of your testing time. And that was a concern for some of the teams this week. So it's not just the weather they've got to think about, it's how they use this allowance of tyres, which is for the entire year.
Part of the reason why Cal was doing so many miles will have been back-to-back. Each one of those T1, T2, T3 bikes will have been set slightly differently. And they need that comparison to work out what is better as they move forward. And when you've got 3 testers that are all different styles, different performance levels, and so on and so forth. You need that consistency of opinion, if you like. And Cal is brilliant as a tester from that point of view, and he's fast. He's everything that you need to be. Trouble is with a motorbike, if you're not right there on the edge of it, it's a different motorbike. If you plonk someone on it that's 0.3 quicker, the bike will feel completely different, will react completely differently on a racetrack. So you need someone that's right on the very edge of things. It's no good having someone that's 3 seconds off the pace or whatever it might have been, because that does not give you the bike that you need for the guys that are coming out, when they roll out next week and the full-blown factory boys are riding them. They want the bike that's the best it can be at that particular point after the test guys are gone. And it just goes to show you, if Cal's back out next week testing as well, that's because they've not gone through the program yet. They've still got stuff they've got to test. And they're still going to be testing stuff when they put the latest signings on their machinery. It's going to be really interesting. And, of course, you guys will get full access next week with a bit of luck. Everyone will be able to get down pit lane and so on and so forth. And the timing will be up properly instead of this sort of clandestine timing when they turn off, transponders every now and again just to fox the people that are looking over the fence or those that have climbed under it, one or the other. I still don't quite understand. I mean, I understand these shakedown tests, but if you're gonna have a shakedown test where you don't want anybody to see, hear, or time what you're doing, then private test somewhere. Put your boys out somewhere else. It just seems slightly odd that we get to Sepang and there's all this secrecy. And then you've got the usual ball ache of trying to get in the track. You're not on the list, which is always a tricky one as well. You turn up having travelled all the way to Kuala Lumpur and suddenly you find that somebody's misspelt your name or what have you. And it's some guy that's on the gate that no one's ever seen before and probably won't ever see again, refusing entry to various media people. I don't know what the wind-up is. It must be somebody somewhere must enjoy winding the media up.
I quite like the secrecy aspect of it. I don't know. I think it makes it a little bit like teams trying to keep secrets, turning off the transporters. You don't know actually how fast they're going, putting up boards outside the garage. Let me tell you something.
If it was that important, if it was that earth-shatteringly necessary for them to do it, you would have media people flying drones, climbing fences, getting underneath, hiding in a disguised tent for a week before the test. There's no way you're going to stop the media. It seems to me almost like it's a wind-up hype. And of course, the big wind-up was that no one got told, even though it had been alluded to in previous years, that the manufacturers didn't want the media at trackside on the shakedown test. But 2 weeks prior to the shakedown test is when Frine, poor old Frine, she ends up having to, shoot the messenger Frine that no, we don't want you there. But then, of course, they relaxed that rule and people were allowed in, but had limited access to where they could go at trackside. It just seems to be a little bit messy, really. And when you want the media on side officially, I mean, the media are there to promote the product that they're selling ultimately. And to piss everybody off, it doesn't seem reasonable or any big enough reason to do it. You can keep the garage shut. We're all going to see what you've got. There's nothing that really can be changed that much. The main people that you want to keep the secrets from are in pit lane with you. It's the other teams. It ain't the media. which just seems daft that the media are the ones that get blamed for taking the odd photograph of something that's when every team has got their own spotters walking up and down pit lane. It's again, I liken to Formula One, sorry, but I do it just for Harry. When you got Adrian Newey walking up the pit lane, just
having a little look.
It's all going in that computer brain of his. Well, we got the same equivalent people in pit lane in MotoGP that are going to be seeing what's going on. But some of those people are having to look at their jackets just to see who they're working for this year. Because everybody's moved about a bit.
Top tip, if you want to get anywhere, bring a high-vis jacket and just stick it on. Walk with confidence. No one will stop you. If you've got a high-vis jacket and a clipboard, people think you belong, I think. That's how you get in. Yeah. Dawn of security are quite good.
Yeah,
give it a try next time. Let me know how you get on.
I should just say that it wasn't all the teams. The teams have been at pains to point out to us that what definitely wasn't all the teams that tried to ban the media.
Well, they would say that, wouldn't they?
Well, yeah, but I having spoken to not only the team members, that does seem to be the case. They I mean, I think a lot of us had messages going, "Hang on a minute," because we were told that it was the teams plural, as in all of them, had wanted the media out, and they made clear that the ones that we spoke to, some of them, that
who was it then, Pete?
Come on, name names. Name some names.
Well, put it this way: the European ones all contacted us to say, "Look, we don't have a problem." So yeah, I mean, and yeah, I think they felt a bit unfairly kind of tarnished by this. That it gave the impression that all the teams don't want media in MotoGP or anything else. And yeah, they made clear, look, we don't mind at all. You're welcome. But obviously, that wasn't the unanimous view.
Well, I think we said enough there. We hate the media, don't we? Bloody bastards.
How can you say something like that, Harry, and still sound posh?
I think if anything, you sound posher. Let's move on. Still in keeping, though, somebody who was definitely at the test, unlike many of the other riders, obviously, was the only rookie on the grid for this year, Moto2 champion Augusto Fernandez. He will be the sole rookie for Tech 3 Gas. But MotoGP's not been very nice to its rookies in recent history. Darren Binder, Remy Gardner, my main man, Ika Lecuona. Still
he got 2 years.
He did get 2 years, but I know
what you're saying.
But it was an unceremonious sacking, wasn't it? And now we have this, we've talked about it before, we have this huge influx of talent coming through Moto3 and Moto2 and even below those categories as well. Particularly, we spoke a lot about Pedro Costa, which KTM obviously have within their fold as well, touted as a future superstar. He's only 18. I think he finished 5th last year in Moto2, didn't he? And that was missing 2 rounds and he retired from 4. Now there seems to be a little bit, is there pressure then on Fernandez, particularly the way that Tech 3 outfit have treated their riders in the past? Do you think there's a lot of pressure on this rookie, Keith?
There's always pressure on rookies, and it's intensifying, and it's never going to get. I mean, you're in the absolute cauldron of MotoGP, and your comment regarding Tech 3 or Tech 3,
sorry,
most people like to say nowadays. I always find that a little bit posh, so I say Tech 3.
Pizza Tech 3.
Hervé Poncharal, Guy Coughlin, really good people. They're good people. They're a 1980s style management situation. The only pressure they will be under, and the one that Augusto will be under, is coming from KTM. I think that is always going to be the factory pressure rather than the team pressure of Tech 3. I would say pastorally, they look after their people pretty well, the French team. Hervé Poncharal is a great guy. Guy Coughlin is the mad professor behind it all. Whether they've fallen behind a little bit, this is what concerns me slightly. Tech 3, I said what I said just now because I love the fact that they've got this slightly older-fashioned management style in the team, but maybe that's what's holding them back. Maybe things have moved on slightly differently, and that management style is not quite where it should be nowadays. And it will remain to be seen whether they have another dull year this year, because it hasn't been great for them since they went to KTM, that's for sure. And we'll see whether they manage to pick up the pace on that. But also, I think KTM are going to throw the kitchen sink at this year. This year, they're not going to. Last year has been a disaster for them effectively. So I can see them really pushing to make that work, and that adds even more pressure for Augusto. He's in where he needs to be. He should have been in there. He's going to have to step up to the mark. It's going to be about injury. If you pick up injuries, niggling injuries are the worst ones. Big ones give you an opportunity to recover from them. Niggling injuries are the ones that affect your performance, almost unseen behind the scenes. You've got, twisted joints or muscles or ligaments or something like that that's just making it so difficult to ride a motorcycle the way that you need to ride one nowadays. But yet you can't see the injury so much from a spectator or from a team point of view. So it just looks like you're slow. That is really difficult to recover from. And, you're always on shifting sands when you're in MotoGP. There's a lot of talent out there now, and a lot of KTM particularly are quite ruthless when it comes to hiring and firing. So it's never going to be easy. And you might have a contract for 2 years, but contracts, I've never been a great lover of them. They're only really there to fit the nuts and bolts around the reality of things. If you're not happy in a team, what's the point of them contracting you to it? If it's the other way around, what's the point of holding you to the contract? It's never going to work. You've got to have something that gels more than just a piece of paper. So we'll wait and see how that pans out. I hate talking about this already. Bloody hell, we ain't even started a year and Augusto's already got that question mark. He's horrendous.
Hey, Pete's the one who wrote the article on it.
I know. And Pete, the trouble is with Pete, he's bloody accurate when he writes articles. It's not like you look at it and think, oh, yeah, that's a load of bullshit. It'd be like that if I wrote articles.
This is the only pressure really on Augusto, I think, to answer your question about the pressure side, Harry, or the difference in pressure compared to any other rookie situation is the Acosta thing, isn't it? Acosta has come out and said that he had the opportunity to come to MotoGP this year. He didn't say with who, but he turned it down. Obviously because of his past record, he's already being tipped and has been for several years as a future MotoGP star. So it's that thing for KTM. If he does want to go up, what do they do? Where do they put him? So a lot depends on how he does in Moto2 this year. But it's certainly not helping pressurize with Augusto. There's only so many seats, isn't there, for where they can put Acosta. They don't want to lose Acosta with this stellar record that he's got. It's a bit like we saw previously where the other guys got sort of moved on because they wanted to move people up. It's the issue when you've got this ladder of talent, haven't you? But everyone's coming up it all the time. There's always people pushing to join or take over your seat. So that being said, I have to say this week, Fernandez, he rode in the wet on certainly day 2, did really well. Looked instantly quick. I thought he was up near the top of the time, in fact, on top of the timesheets for most of the day. Not a soaking wet track, but it was a wet track, wet tyres. I think that was his first time on the bike. So decent ride there, and he was third fastest today in the dry. So I think he's doing all right.
I think the headroom, people at trackside, management, the teams, they can see where the expansion room is coming from. They can see things that you can't when we're looking in. It's better if you're in. What's the old saying? Rather be on the inside pissing out than on the outside pissing in. It's basic, but it's that kind of situation. They know what's going on internally, where the pressures are, what the kid's going through. And they can see whether there's expansion. I mean, who would have said that Fabio Quartararo was going to be a MotoGP world champion when he was in Moto2? Nobody. He rode a Moto2 bike pretty well, but at the end of the day, you wouldn't have seen it. Back to Augusto on the MotoGP bike. Very interesting comments that Jake Dixon made in our previous pod. That when you ride a MotoGP bike, the seamless gearbox and the electronic control and all the rest of it over them bikes, you don't even feel the limiters being cacking in. When you're riding a road bike and you've got the back wheel spinning, when you're in a car and it hits some kind of traction control, it's like you've just thrown an anchor out. It's so rough and agricultural in comparison with how MotoGP is. So when you jump on one of them things, you've got big smooth power, you've got seamless gearbox, you've got traction control that doesn't feel like traction control because it's so smooth. It's got to be like an absolute dream for someone like Augusto to get on a bike like that. And when your confidence is building in the wet, when you're in the wet with wet tyres on, you've got that little bit more movement, providing the track isn't sort of greasy in places and puddles in places and all the rest of it, which can catch you out and ruin your day. When you've got a motorbike like that, you're getting used to it. It is a pleasure to jump on a bike that works so well in comparison with everything else you've ridden prior. So, providing that progress for Augusto, the pressure doesn't get him to overload his talent, and he hits all his marks and moves forward. Yes, there's going to be a problem because, like Pete said, the backlog of people coming through at the moment is so talented and so good. But if you're KTM and you see Augusto, his progress is really making progress, and he's had a year's worth of progress, and it looks like he's got more room for progression again in 2024, then you've got a real difficult decision to make then, haven't you, if someone else is vying for his ride.
And he'll have Pol Espargaro alongside him, won't he? So he'll have that benefit of having an experienced rider to look at the data, learn from. Oliveira's won a couple of races, hasn't he, with Tectoir? So that they can be successful. Tectoir can be successful with KTM and everything else. So I think that could be...
You see, I think Pol Espargaro is beatable. I think as an experienced teammate alongside you, I think that's a great target. That's the one that Augusto has to aspire to. And I think that, if you had a real superstar alongside you, that would be a tricky one because you'd always be playing second fiddle. But I think Pol Espargaro can ride a motorbike and he's at a great level. But I think he's an attainable level for a talent coming up. and that's what's going to be interesting when we get to the track. If Augusto gets the better of pole, then his life is safe in MotoGP.
It's terrible, isn't it? We haven't even had a race yet, and we're already discussing the rookie being replaced. Awful, but that's what motorsport's all about, isn't it? We love we love a rumor, and a prediction as well, which Livio Suppo has been making many. He's got quite a bit of time on his hands at the moment, so he's been making some predictions. And I thought it might be fun to go through them and see what you think. I've picked pretty much all of them out, and I've simplified what he said, but you can see the full article on crash.net as well. The first thing he says, though, Jorge Martin is among 12 realistic title contenders this year. Do we agree?
What, that there's 12 title contenders? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of narrows it down to just half the field, doesn't it? 12. Yeah. So at the end of,
it's a bold prediction. Yeah.
I actually don't call that a prediction, Livio. Come on, stand up and say which one is going to be the winner.
Well, he's named Martin. So do you think, Jorge Martin, he's got something to prove? He missed out on the factory seat, but Pramac is obviously still very highly sought after seat.
What's going to win MotoGP this year is consistency. We've got 2 races every weekend now. You can look across that field and think to yourself, who are going to be the people that are consistently going to be there? Will Jorge Martin be one of them? Certainly he's fast enough to win races. That's not a doubt, I don't think. But I think that you've got more factors this year than at any time ever in the Grand Prix world of motorbike racing. There's so many factors that are going to affect the outcome at the end of the day. This is going to be the toughest year anybody has ever raced in my view, and the most competitive. And it will be a situation of who's giving away the most points rather than who's gaining the most points as the year goes on. Jorge Martin, good shout, but just as Livio said, 1 of 12. So I don't even think that's a real prediction. Step up, Livio. Come on.
Yeah, I don't know if he named the 12. I think he was talking to MotoGP.com, wasn't he? I don't know, but I mean, if it's 12, that you'd say, well, right, that's the 5 factory teams and then a satellite team, if you like. Now, obviously, Martin rides for Pramac, so he's a satellite rider. Then, so who's the other maybe satellite rider? Does he thinking Zarco, or is he thinking maybe Oliveira?
The top 12 from last year.
Well, no Suzuki's now, but yes.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. Well, now.
But I mean, just on that alone, if you just said, well, yeah, each of the factory teams, those guys are capable of. So there's 10 riders that could fight for the title, and yeah, you could easily add another 2 satellite names to that. So yeah, I'd go with that. Martin, I think, as Keith says, you do worry about his consistency. I think he will go well in the sprint races, though. I think they could suit him. So he might be our sprint race king.
Sprint races are balls out. It's going to be who's the balls out racers on the grid. They're the ones that I'm enjoying. That don't worry about tyres. That set their bike up for those quick laps throughout but then they tail off a little bit, sort of mid distance or whatever it is, because they have to bring their tyre back to work for them for the full distance. So I think sprint races they might only be half points, but it's going to make the difference in the championship at the end of the year. That's a fact.
This is what I wish F1 was a bit more like, actually, into like the fact if you said, there's 12 drivers in Formula One that could win the championship, people will be like, that is ridiculous. What? But I think that's better for the sport, I think, as a whole. And that's why I think MotoGP trumps F1 in that bit. Can you believe I've said that?
The problem with F1 is there's always been a huge amount of disparity in the funding. I think that's the problem. I mean, the Concord Agreement always gave Formula One, Ferrari more money because of their sort of grandfather rights, if you like, to do whatever they want to do. And I think that they're never going to get over that as it is at the moment, because the agreements that are already in place lead to a massive disparity in what you can spend on, aero. Look at the money, but the big thing about 2024 in bikes in MotoGP is the amount of effort going into aero. It's more effort than there's ever been, and in Formula One, it's all about aero. It's about design, and of course, with a car, probably more than a bike, is that aero dictates the dimensions of your motor, where everything is, how everything is shaped around the aero, because it's about getting the thing through the air at the most optimum rate. With a bike, it's a different kettle of fish. The things lean over, the things change angles, in a straight line. You've got aero forces affecting all sorts of areas, but there's been more people in aero this winter trying to get that sorted out. I mean, might not like the way motorbikes look as far as the prototypes are concerned, but all of these developments are coming through, and it's costing a bloody fortune. The smaller teams are going to be struggling a bit more about it, but in Formula One, it's the disparity's even bigger. I mean, Williams, for instance, have got no money, whereas Ferrari have got endless amounts of it. Where do you stop it?
You are listening to Keith Ewan on the Crash MotoGP podcast. We won't go down. There's a whole rabbit hole we could go down there with F1, but we won't. Let's move on to more of Suppo's comments. Maybe a nice, easy one. Ducati will dominate.
I think that just comes under a 3-letter word, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, he's also said this, though. If Yamaha can give Fabio... Well, actually, no, that's a rubbish one. If Yamaha can give Fabio more, if Yamaha can give Fabio more top speed, he'll be up there. I mean, that's a.
Well, I mean, yeah. Again, these are fairly obvious, predictions at the moment. But I mean,
there's better
ones.
Have
Yamaha found what they'd lost in Valencia? That's the question. What happened? We don't know what happened in Valencia when they turned out. Everyone said they got more top speed. They get to the test at the end of the season last year, and suddenly it all gone. It don't just evaporate. I don't quite understand what happened there. But again, Cal Crutchlow had got top speed at Sepang, and it's a top speed track. I mean, you've got two massive straights there. So if you've got performance, we'll see whether it transpires. Next, the main test is going to tell us, providing we have the weather to go with it. Ducati are brilliant at finding something extra. I'm going to be interested to see what pops up next week when we've got the test proper, to see if because we haven't seen everything yet. I mean, we've all been squabbling trying to get photographs of stuff and all the rest of it at this shakedown test, but the real stuff's coming out of the box next week. We'll see what the package is going to be. They're old hands at not giving stuff away too soon. It'll be interesting to see what Gigi and co have come up with for the 2024 season. But Yamaha top end, I think they've got a little bit. Will it be enough? I think Livio is pretty astute when he says, pretty obvious when he says that Ducati are going to dominate, because they've got so many bikes on the grid. I think the big issue is going to be who's going to be on what bike at the end of the year when we're all changing contracts again, and we'll see who's doing the rider market. I'm looking forward to that, which should kick off about March.
The other thing is that while Ducati might well dominate, what about the riders? Is it going to be split? The win's going to be split between those riders. We know Bastianini, he's stepping up to the factory team. It doesn't mean they'll actually dominate the riders' standings. They might dominate the race wins and things, but if they're being shared between different riders, and there's plenty of race winning riders at Ducati now, you could get someone like Fabio come along and just snatch it from them at the last minute, couldn't you? If it plays out that way. That's the thing. The other thing is, now that they've arrived, if you like, at the very top, they've been fighting to get back on top as world champions since 2007. We've seen this talk, haven't we, about, okay, we're going to be a little bit more, we're just going to back off a bit in terms of the developments. We're not going to make the mistake of last year. We changed too much with the engine and sort of wrong-footed their riders in those early rounds, that they're going to just back off a little bit. But that does perhaps leave room for guys like Aprilia, who Keith has highlighted previously, who aren't going to back off. Maybe they're going to roll the dice and go, you know what, we're going to throw a load of developments at this. If they were to get that right, there is a chance that someone could sort of capitalize on, let's say, Ducati just being a little bit more cautious, which is very un-Ducati-like, of course. But then they are now the reigning champions for the first time, as we say, since 2007. So it's a new situation. They're the ones being chased now. They've been chasing everybody for all these years. So I think it's they are undoubtedly the team to beat. The performance of the bike, but I think that doesn't mean by any means it's a walk in the park and you can write their name on the riders' title.
I think Ducati are unleashed. I think that now, Gigi, the strategy's finally worked. I can see them not being that conservative. I think they're still going to be going at it. Glad you picked up on the Aprilia thing again, though, because the Aprilia thing is, for me, the team to watch. I'm really looking forward to see where they go. 4 riders this year, providing they've got the manpower to manage that properly and to make the developments they're going to make through the year. I think Aprilia, because they had speed last year, that was a bike that worked really well. It's going to be very interesting to see whether their winter has been productive.
Well, Livio has said Maverick Vinales could be the big surprise in 2023, especially with new crew chief Manu, I'm going to say Cazo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we got it right. There we go, with Manu Cazo. So well, maybe that ties in fittingly then with.
Well, I think the thing with Maverick is it's as much north of the eyebrows as it is anywhere else with him. And the fact that he's settled and being treated and respected in the manner that he needs to make him fast again is going to be the difference. And I think signing him early, made him quicker, made him more comfortable. I think Aprilia is a motorbike that's going to work for him this year. So not a bad shout, actually. But I think it's another one that most people on pit wall, whether he's going to beat his teammate or not, I'm not so sure about that. It's whether Maverick has got the fight in it. Not the dog in the fight, it's the fight in the dog. And at the end of the day, it is going to be a dog fight throughout this year. You are going to have to rub shoulders. You are going to have to push. You are going to have to take liberties. And I got a feeling that Maverick might just be fractionally lacking in that department. If he comes out with a ball and chain swinging, then that'll be great, and we can expect something more from him. But I think that I just don't see that in him as a rider. I think it is going to be a push and shove kind of a year because it's going to be so close, and there's going to be different players. You kind of, when you race a series, you kind of get used to the people who are going to be the quick ones around you, and you kind of get a strategy for each particular person. Oh, that's Fabio in front. I know how to deal with him. That's Marc Marquez in front. Well, I better watch out for him. He's going to be... You've got a strategy of the people you deal with. When you've got half the field capable of winning the race, each one, it's a proper dogfight. It's a sort it all out when you get to the corner type of thing. Not quite that basic, but you know where I'm coming from. You've got different riders on different motorbikes all around you all of the time, and different racetracks. Some bikes will perform better, some riders will perform better. It's a great mismatch coming up. I mean, it's going to be proper racing this year.
I thought Aprilia made a pretty good impression at this shakedown. There was Massimo Rivola there from day one of the shakedown. Racing CEO, he's there. Albesiano was there from day one. Paolo Bonoro, the team manager. All of the top guys from day one of the shakedown, when you've only got Lorenzo Savadori, the test rider, on track, they were there in Sepang, in the pits, watching trackside. That wasn't the case for everyone on that up and down the pit lane. There's still some teams that the senior guys will be arriving now for the official test. So right from the start there, you had Razin Razali come down. Obviously Malaysian, it wasn't a great journey for him, but come down from the city each day. The new satellite team we've spoken about a lot before, he's there meeting with Aprilia as well, getting everything ready. The impression was that they were, they're not backing off here. They've had this breakthrough season, and
but
here they are.
It's their time, isn't it? I mean, this is their opportunity to actually try and put themselves in that marketplace. I mean, there's never been a better time for them. This is it for Aprilia. You don't let it go when you've got to that point from last year, and you can see why. I'd be disappointed if the main people didn't turn up at a shakedown test. I'd be thinking, if I was a rider, what the hell's going on? Are they actually committed? You want to see the main people there. There's just so little time on track, so little track time. You'd want to pick up on every single nuance, whether that's a team member not working quite as they should do, somebody that's weak in their attitude, or whatever it might be. You'd want to pick up on all that stuff and get it all drilled out by the time we get to racing proper. So, big up for Aprilia bringing the main guns out to observe what's going on.
One more twist for you, Keith, here, okay? Here's one that we were just discussing in the media room today. What if, you're talking about Aleix and Maverick and they should be poised for a great season. What if Oliveira comes along and starts challenging them? How will they cope with that? Will that distake? How will Maverick feel? Hang on, what's going on here? Razin Razali made clear, look, our target is to push the factory team, beat them ideally. That's what we've been brought in to do, to really push this project forward. How will those guys feel if they're getting pressure from other Aprilias?
Well, who cares? Is the way I would be in management. At the end of the day, you're all moving together as a 4-man team now, so you're trying to work that out. Oliveira is going to be pushing and shoving. Oliveira is going to be there. I think he's there or thereabouts anyway. So we're going to see that in the test next week. Now, it won't affect Aleix, in my view, because Aleix is a screen biter. He just gets on with it every time. But, it'll affect Maverick because Maverick needs to feel the love of all the management being behind him. He needs that kind of, or it appears that he needs that. I don't know Maverick personally, so I can't say that he definitely does, but he's a little bit more complex. I think with, Oliveira, he's just going to go for it. He's just going to go for it, and he really could. And if you are Aprilia, I suppose getting to the answer to the question is that you wouldn't hold him back just because he's in the satellite team. You would look at, and I think they're quite ruthless in Aprilia as well. They go only second to KTM in my view when it comes. Bessiano is not someone that has been too kind to teammates that aren't performing as they probably should be in the past, and Rivola will back him with this. And Oliveira is a massive signing. They'd already done their deal with the factory duo, so Oliveira coming in, hungry and fast. You wouldn't want to hold him back if you owned the team. If it was your team, you'd want to be giving him the kit. And what's to stop them? It's a satellite team. It's their satellite team. It's backed by Aprilia. Give him the number one bike if he's going fast. Why would you not do that? I've not really seen that at the moment. Satellite teams have always been considered to be not the factory team. Even now, even though it is a factory team, it's kind of not the factory team. Few less personnel, da. But we haven't yet seen a factory team that's in contention for winning a world title. But potentially, if Oliveira does get off the ground as quick as we think he did, look at what he did in Valencia last year. He jumped on that motorbike and he was, fourth quickest or something from memory. He was there or thereabouts on a really horrible track. I mean, Valencia is not a great example of a Grand Prix track. But so Oliveira could be thereabouts. And who's to stop, Aprilia suddenly saying, okay, well, we'll give him the number one kit. I mean, I can't imagine what that's going to do. I can't imagine what that's going to do to Maverick's head, but we'll have to wait and see.
Well, what about
another dimension? So this is exactly what Razin was saying, was that it was so different to when he was a satellite team at Yamaha, in that Aprilia are saying to him, look, we expect this. We expect you to be pushing our guys, fighting for, no holding back here. And as you say, Keith, I think it's also Pit Bar of KTM was saying, whichever rider delivers gets the parts first. I mean, they try and support riders equally, obviously, but the reality is, the parts don't come out the machine 4 at a time, do they? No. There's only so many. Someone has to get them first, and someone gets them last. And it comes down to who gives the results. And if you're delivering, and they want RNF to deliver, they've made clear you're coming in to be an Aprilia team and to push as hard as you can. And for Razin, he was saying that's it's a very different situation to what he's been in the past. But let's see how it goes.
I've always thought it's best to be the second fastest rider in a team, because sometimes the stuff that comes out the machine first as a bolt-on goodie don't work.
Isn't always good. A bit done, yeah. Let them try it, and then it's good for you. Right, cool. We've still got to fit in some listener questions, so I want to speed through these last two that Livio said. We talk so highly of the Aprilia riders, particularly obviously Miguel Oliveira. KTM have one of the strongest rider lineups for 2023.
Yeah, they do, but they've still got to have the bike that works for them.
Pete?
Yeah. I mean, both of them are proven race winners in MotoGP, aren't they? Jack Miller, he's aiming for wins on a third different bike. He'd be the first guy to do it. We've spoken about this before. So, Jack can ride pretty much everything. Brad Binder, I mean, he won his third ever MotoGP race, didn't he? Which was KTM's first ever win. I mean, the guy just has raw talent, and he's a raw racer. And he's been saying, you've probably seen the story on Crash. This is my best chance. This is. You can see that he's now getting to the point where he wants the results. They've been close, they've been top 6 in the championship, but it's time to take that next step. And this is the year. I think this is a big year for the KTM project, for Brad, obviously. Jack, I mean, it's his first year in KTM. As he was saying, it does take time to learn bikes these days. When you swap to another bike. Okay, we've seen Oliveira settling very well, but he pointed out, look at Maverick. Maverick jumped on the Aprilia. Everyone thought he'd be blowing Alacia away within 2 or 3 races. It actually took a year, didn't it, before he was really finishing on the podium and starting to challenge Alacia. So it's so close in MotoGP, you can't just instantly be competitive. So Jack will have to see how quickly he can adapt to the KTM. But yeah, I think Brad is fully fired up. This is the year where he went last year without winning a race. He came ridiculously close on several occasions, but it was actually his first season in MotoGP without a win. So you want to put that behind him sooner rather than later.
Well, the final one then, still on riders. Honda have no more excuses, at least on the rider side.
I think that's Livio taking a swipe back at Honda personally, but there you go. I mean, like, it's a tricky one, Honda, isn't it? I can't see them making the improvements that they need to make to get that bike to where it goes. Honda have done this before. They've had a motorbike, that works really, really well, but then they kind of somehow, engineering wise, they've got, a beautiful motorbike that's just not quite the full package. And it will be interesting to see whether the mighty Marc Marquez can make it work this year. I mean, we talked about it in the last pod. I've never seen Marquez. Well, we don't usually see him working as hard as he is. The fact that we're seeing him in the gym working unbelievably hard. I mean, he's going to be a weapon. He's got the maturity now to be able to carry it off. If his physique is back to where it needs to be to race a motorbike at his kind of level, in his kind of way, then he's going to make the Honda work. Whether it's a race-winning bike or not, it might be with Marc Marquez on it. We'll wait and see whether it's consistently there or thereabouts. I mean, there's so many dynamics this year, isn't there? If it doesn't work for him this year, I can see him making a move at the end of the year. And as we said again in the last podcast, with Alex Marquez now riding for Ducati, therein lies an interesting scenario. But of course, there could be a wild card anywhere for Marc Marquez. I mean, who wouldn't sign Marc Marquez if he has a good year as a rider this year? Interesting that Livio said it's down to the riders, if I understood that question correctly.
I think it's, they've got a really solid rider lineup. Sorry, even Taka Nakagami has proven that he is fast on his day, and the rest of the riders, now they've got a world champion and they got the winner of the last round from 2022. They don't really have any excuses when it comes to their riders not being up to scratch, at least.
Well, we'll see. I think that's slightly harsh, and I think that we've not seen. It's funny how Honda have been the quietest out of all the teams, really. We've not really heard. They've got their head down at the moment.
Let the on-track action do the talking.
Yeah, exactly. They're working away in probably what I would call, and without generalising too much, but what I would call a very Japanese way of dealing with whatever they're dealing with. They're keeping it in-house. They're working away at what's going on. And it's going to be interesting to see that now that Mark is back, as fit as he can be, his input is going to be crucial to Honda's forward momentum, if there is any. We'll see.
Do you think this actually came in as a question? I can't play the voice note because it didn't fit very well. So sorry, Rob from America who asked this. Do Honda rely too much on Marc Marquez?
It's why they are where they are now. Yes, is the short answer to that. Crutchlow had a hand in it through LCR at some stage as well. I mean, he's a great development rider, as we now know, even more. And the fact is that I think they went the Marc Marquez way. That motorbike, Marc Marquez rode a motorbike like no one else. The whole world changed around Marc Marquez's style and the way that he was doing things on a motorbike. And when Honda lost Honda's electronics, for instance, when it went to the Magneti Marelli, platform that they went to, I always remember Colin Edwards saying to me something like the electronics that we now have on MotoGP is like backwards 7 years. The Marelli system didn't work anything like as good on the Yamaha he was riding at the time. And we heard the same thing with Honda. Anywhere near like the control that you had over all the systems that you need on the bike to make it work well. The Honda was a very snappy motorbike. It was a very quick motorbike, but it had the kind of power that you needed to have more control over. Now, if you're a Casey Stoner or a Marc Marquez or whatever it is, you could ride around that kind of thing. In fact, you like that kind of thing. Speaking of Casey Stoner, one of the reasons why he didn't like Grand Prix racing so much anymore was all the electronic control. He wanted less of it. So it's a situation where Honda lost some of their advantage through Marc Marquez being as good as he was, and the fact that the electronics changed a little bit a few years ago. And they never seem to have really made their way back. It's always been kind of a one-rider motorbike, hasn't it, in recent times? Taka Nakagami. And the other thing is Honda seem to not really want to take a risk with other riders. They've missed the rider market a little bit. I mean, Taka probably should have gone ages ago. And somebody else probably should have been in. But of course, you're looking then at political regions, aren't you? The Asia Pacific region, the sponsor that was on LCR most of the time, they needed someone from that region to really keep the sponsorship going and the like. So the funding and the finance and the politics of it came into play. It's still, I still think Honda is a one-rider team. We'll see whether there's anybody that steps up, but I still think Marc Marquez is going to be their main asset, and he's going to get, I hope, around some of the problems they have, and hopefully Honda will develop through these last few weeks before we go racing proper in Portugal. They'll have got around some of the problems they've had recently.
I've got to admit, I was surprised only to see Stefan Bradl on track. I thought that Nagashima might have been on track. Two test riders for Honda, but only Bradl, at least, unless the transponders were off and we somehow missed them out on track. But there was a lot of staring at the window.
Fair, he's a commentator now. He's not. Bradl's a very fast motorcycle rider, but he's not cutting edge anymore. It's kind of. This is the reason why Yamaha really, for me, are going to make great strides, because they had the foresight to hire Cal Crutchlow. I think you need someone that's right. It comes back to what I said earlier on this podcast. If you're 3 or 4 tenths off the pace, that motorbike, when it gets in the hands of the full factory guys, is not going to be where they want it to be. The test rider has almost got to be as quick as the full factory rider that's going to be racing the thing, to make sure that bike is where it needs to be when they cock their leg over it for the first real big test. I don't know. I mean, it just seems that Honda have not really recognised, the inherent problem they've got.
I was speaking to someone from Honda and sort of following the logic of what Keith was just saying there, which is, Marc is physically much, much stronger, isn't he? So it should be a better year. And this person's turned around and said to me, yeah, but when you've got a team like Repsol Honda and a rider like Marc, better, that's not good enough. You've got to be fighting for the World Championship. And that's what Marc expects, isn't it? I mean, Marc, he's had 3 years now without doing that. So, whilst it should be, Marc is in great physical shape, we see, it does just turn the spotlight onto the bike again and everything else. But how much better will he be? Will he be able to fight for the World Championship? It would be like a big jump for that bike to go from not winning a race last year, wouldn't it, to taking on, just spoke about Ducati dominating, taking on the likes of Pecco and Bastianini on the Desmosed Medici. So, yeah, I mean, Ken Kawachi's come over from Suzuki, but as we said the last podcast, you don't make changes overnight to a bike, do you? It's going to take time for all that to come in and everything else. So it just seems like a whole regrouping phase, but how patient will Marc be prepared to be?
Do you know what? I've just joined a few dots up. I'm a little bit slow sometimes, and it kind of like I said earlier on in this podcast that we've never seen Marc training as much as he has been this winter. And maybe the reason why we're seeing that is because he is putting out there that he's in tip-top condition and it will be the bike. You've just said it, Pete. I mean, thanks for that, because I hadn't kind of made that connection quite as well as I should have done. It just goes to show you're much smarter than me. But maybe that's why we're seeing the PR, if you like, of Marc Marquez. Look how fit I am. I am ready for it.
And look at the effort
maybe he's chucked the ball in Honda's court.
That's it. Look at the effort I'm putting in. That with sort of grimaces on his face and the pain he's going through with all that. Of course, the one thing, the double vision, isn't it? That's never going to go away. So that's another thing that they need to sort that bike out, because Marc, whenever he falls, it's always going to be a question mark, isn't it, over the eye? So yeah. Big year.
Big year. We like a big year. Thank you, Rob, from Georgia in the US, for instigating that question. Sorry we couldn't play your voice note out loud. Didn't like it for some reason. But we can hear from Adam.
Hello, Crash MotoGP team. Just wanted to start by saying thanks for the podcast. Much appreciated. Look forward to it each and every week. My question is that we've had Honda, followed by Suzuki, followed by Yamaha, and then last year, obviously, Ducati winning the world title. Does that mean it's KTM or Aprilia this year? Let's hope so. Anyway, hope you're well. Cheers.
Well, it's a good question, and it's almost a statement rather than a question, isn't it? I mean, we've probably covered the answers to where we are. I think Aprilia have got an opportunity. KTM, depends how much work they've done. And again, going back on the Livio basis, there are 12 riders that can win this world title, and there are only so many factory teams. Ducati may start the season with a bit of an advantage just because of where they are. But I don't know. I've just got this strange feeling about Aprilia this year. I really have. I hope it works for them, because I think that the smallest factory really out there financially, although they've got Peugeot and all the rest of it behind them. I mean, the parent company is massive, but I still think that the Aprilia budget is probably not, the size of someone like, well, certainly not the size of Ducati, because they chuck money at it like there's no tomorrow. So we'll see, but I'd like to think Aprilia too.
And I think also, Keith, it comes down to consistency, doesn't it? For most of last year, the Aprilia, you could pretty much bet on it being up there in every race. And so when you're in a season like now, where, as you said, with sprint races, consistency is going to be even more important. That's the sort of bike you need. At the same time, with Adam's question, KTM, that was their problem, wasn't it? Consistency. And that's why we're hesitating about putting them in the title chase, because they need to show that they can be fighting for the podium, the top 6 at every race. And I think, that's a major goal for them this year, for the riders, the management, everybody. They know that's the step they need. So let's see if they can do it. But yeah, with Aprilia, up until those flyaways, wasn't it, when it all sort of started falling apart, you could bet on one of them being on the podium really during the European round. So yeah, if they continue that with all of this sprint race uncertainty and everything else, they could be racking up the points.
Let's hope it wasn't a fluke. Thanks, Adam, for that question. And we have got time for one more. I always wonder sometimes if we're a bit low on stuff to talk about. I don't know if we'll do nearly an hour. Yet here we are at 55 minutes. Sam, from your neck of the woods, Keith.
Hi, Sam from Northamptonshire here. Love the podcast and website. Thank you for all the great content and entertainment. My question is regarding sprint races. Obviously, tyre wear shouldn't be an issue, but I've heard that there's going to be a limit to how much fuel that can be used. Do you think this will affect the potential flat-out racing that we're all hoping for from the sprint races? Thank you.
Yeah, fuel. I hate the fact that we might not get enough fuel on board, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I'm fairly sure that the manufacturers will have definitely sorted that out. Pete, I haven't actually looked at the rule book for the sprint race.
I was actually chatting to Danny Aldridge about this just in the paddock, actually, when Cal pulled up and let us know how his day was going. But yeah, so Danny was saying, I think it's 12 litres of fuel. So I think it's roughly what half a race would be normally. So it's not a big difference. And that was, originally there wasn't a fuel limit, and that's what raised all the eyebrows, wasn't it? When the sprint races came out, it was, well, hang on a minute, because the bikes such as the Ducati that would then be able to run basically with unlimited fuel consumption, if you like, just flat out in qualifying spec for a sprint race, tough for the other guys to beat.
It's one of my daughters just come home. That's all right.
Keith's got a busy household.
You'll have to excuse me. She's delightful. Hello, Holly. Nice to see you back from lunch. I think that's a mistake, restricting fuel, for me. I mean, that will be the manufacturers worried about the fact that there is some headroom at Ducati or wherever for turning the wick up. The only reason we have a fuel limit pretty much is to not get a situation where there's a massive disparity on how much fuel you can stuff through a motorbike and therefore make horsepower. And I understand. I'm in conflict with myself here, because you've got to have a fuel limit, because otherwise you're going to have a Ducati that's 15 mile an hour faster. And that will be a problem in a sprint race and will give an unfair advantage to them. But all the same, I just was relishing the fact that we could have absolutely flat out, don't worry about tyre wear, don't worry about anything, just turn everything up to the stop. Riders, no restriction at all, just elbow in and going for it. So kind of it takes away from me a little bit of the fun I thought that we were going to have in sprint races. But I can understand why manufacturers will have been lobbying to try and limit the fuel. You might have ended up with a whole load of blown engines all over the place as well. That's the other problem, isn't it? You turn the fuel wick, you turn it up so they're pulling 4 horsepower. How close to the limit is a Yamaha? We had a time when it popped onto the rev limiter at Mugello, for instance, when you come over the rise there and it was spinning the wheel just a little bit and it was touching the rev limiter a bit too hard, and bang. We'd not seen Yamahas explode for some considerable time. And we've seen it before. Ducatis, I seem to remember Argentina. Was it Zara? I can't remember now who it was, but they do go bang occasionally. These motorbikes, we've only got limited engines for the entire year as well, and so we're into a bit of an unknown territory. So if they were allowed unlimited fuel, it would have been absolute flat out horsepower, and I believe that we would have been on the edge of A, one manufacturer dominating, and B, to keep up, a whole load of other motors going pop, which nobody wants.
So yeah, they'll get a little bit more if you divided it per lap. 12 liters over a half distance. I think it's 22 over a full distance. So they get a little bit more for the sprint race, but that's all. And then on the tire side, it's that question, isn't it, of whether do you keep let's say the same tire choice you would have used for the full race and just burn through it, as he says, ride it flat out, or do you actually drop soft? Do you go to a softer compound? So there'll be. I think we might see both, and that's what will make it interesting. Again, we might see people go, you know what, I'm going to go for the softest compound tire and nurse it gently and get it to the finish, and then you'll have the other guys going, my bike only works with a medium, and I'm just going to go and use it all over half a distance.
We've talked about this before. This is where you're going to have, personnel-wise, this is going to be a tough year, purely and simply because you could have two different motorbikes set up during the course of the weekend. Two different setups, a little bit, just tiny bit different, that will make the difference in a sprint race or in a longer race as well. You basically, the amount of work that this sprint race is actually compounded for technicians and for people on that we don't hardly ever see. The data. All the acquisition that you're going to be getting, data to try and get the best out of a motorbike over a half distance situation. It's going to develop as the year moves on. We're going to see, how this is working, which bikes are going better over a short distance compared with a long distance. Tyre wear, you said it there, Pete. Some bikes, use up tyres. So going to be great having a sprint race on a bike that uses up tyres because you're going to be able to go flat out from the lights out. Really good year. I tell you what, I get a question every year, is next year going to be as good as the year we've just had? And kind of like every year that I've been back covering MotoGP, it's been better for some reason or another. And I think 2023 is just going to be an absolute cracker. I can't wait.
We're all very excited for it, I think. Thank you very much for your question, Sam, from Northamptonshire. If you see Keith on the streets, don't look him in the eyes. He doesn't like eye contact. Run him over. Not too hard, though. Just a little nudge. Just let him know you're there. Thank you very much, though. If you did send in a question, you can send in a question yourself. You can voice note us. Our email address is podcast@crash.net. We do still accept written submissions as well. But if you would like your voice played out, send it over and we'll get it played for you. But thank you, boys. That is all just about it. Just over an hour. Oh, well, we made it work. Make sure you're tuned in across crash.net for all the very latest news and analysis, as you always are, across the week. And we shall be back with you same time, same place next week. Get questions in, as I said. If you don't want to email us, you can search Crash MotoGP on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and let us know you're listening. Send us your questions or your thoughts. Please do leave us a review as well, wherever you get your podcasts, and we shall be right back here next week, I should say. But thank you. My name's Harry Benjamin. Bye-bye from Pete McLaren, from Keith Ewan, and from Keith's daughter, Holly, who seems like she had a lovely lunch. Bye-bye.